Welcome back to the channel where every story has a voice, and even silence tells a tale. What you're about to hear isn't just drama, it's a quiet storm. It began like a whisper but ended with thunder. It started the day her mother said, "We're moving in with him." No begging. No room for questions. Just that voice that told you you had no say. A small taxi waited outside. Her mother's bag was zipped. Her own box sat by the door like it had been packed yesterday. The compound they entered had gates that opened like they knew power. Neat flowers lined the walkway. Upstairs, a man stood on the balcony waving. Too cheerful. Too expectant. She didn't wave back. He had money. You could smell it in the clean tiles and see it in the quiet generator house that didn't look like it had ever been used. Her mother's laugh changed inside that house. Softer. Careful. It didn't sound like the woman who used to shout from their window at passers-by. And then he appeared, the boy. Same age. Same skin. But he walked like he'd seen things she couldn't understand. He didn't greet. Just walked past like she was a plant in the corner. His name was Daimeji. They sat at the same dinner table that night, her mother smiling too much, the man chuckling at his own jokes. But Daimeji. Silent. Eating slowly. She stole one look at him. He caught it. And he didn't look away. From that moment, something shifted. Not loudly. Not clear. But it was there. They started small, arguments about nothing. Remote control. Sponge in the bathroom. Who drank the last cup of tea? He said she talked too much. She said he breathed like he owned the air. But in between all that noise, their silence said more. She didn't like him. At least, that's what she kept telling herself. But something had started. And stories like this, they don't go backward. She wasn't used to this kind of silence, the expensive kind. Where the fridge hummed like a shy visitor, and people spoke softly like their voices had price tags. Her old street was full of shouting, children dragging sandals, and neighbors pouring gossip like Gary. But here. You could hear the clock ticking in the hallway. Even the wall geckos seemed more disciplined. Every morning, she'd wake up to the sound of her mother giggling in the kitchen. A sound that didn't match the face she used to know. This one wore powder now. Laughed with her hand over her mouth. And when Daimeji entered the room, her mother would quickly fix her scarf. They lived like a family, at least in front of guests. But inside the walls, things were not that simple. She started noticing small things. The way Daimeji stared out the window too long. The way he walked past her like his thoughts were full. The way his voice softened whenever he said her name, though he never said it twice. One day, she was in the kitchen frying plantain. He walked in, took a piece straight from the oil, no words, just eye contact. "You didn't ask," she said. He smiled. "You didn't stop me." Her chest betrayed her with a thump she hoped he didn't hear. From then on, it got worse. He would walk into a room and lean on the door like he owned the frame. She would sit on the edge of the sofa and pretend not to see him watching her. There were too many almosts. Almost touch. Almost smile. Almost words. But no one crossed the line. Not yet. She started to wait for his footsteps in the hallway. He started coming into the kitchen even when he wasn't hungry. They were becoming a sentence that refused to end. And the worst part. Her mother didn't notice. Or maybe she did, and just chose not to see it. There was a day the rain refused to stop. The sky poured like it was emptying out secrets, and the roof played a soft drum above them. They were alone. Her mother had gone for a church meeting. The stepfather traveled for business. The house had never felt this quiet, or this loud. She sat by the window, watching the drops chase each other down the glass. Daimeji walked in, barefoot, holding a book he clearly wasn't reading. He sat on the other sofa, not too close, not too far. They didn't talk. They didn't need to. Their silence was a conversation. When the thunder rolled, she flinched. He looked at her. "You're scared of thunder." She rolled her eyes. "I'm not scared. It just surprised me." "Same thing." "No, it's not." "Okay. You win," he said, raising his hands. She smirked. That was the thing about Daimeji. He never pushed. He just stayed. And somehow, his presence made the room feel fuller. "Do you miss your old house?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "Sometimes. It was noisy. But it made sense." He nodded too. "I miss mine too. Before everything changed." And there it was, something real. Something shared. They both sat in it. She didn't know when she stood up and walked toward the center table. He joined her there. The rain tapped louder on the window. The lights flickered once. "Do you think this is wrong?" she asked, almost in a whisper. He didn't look up. "What?" "This thing, whatever this is." He looked at her then. Long and slow. "I don't know," he said. "But it's not nothing." And just like that, her heart dropped and rose at the same time. She wanted to leave the room. She didn't. She wanted to speak again. She couldn't. Because some moments don't need more words. They just hang, breathing, like smoke. She started avoiding mirrors. Not because she didn't like what she saw, but because lately, her reflection had started asking questions. Questions she couldn't answer. She'd walk into the living room, and if he was there, her steps would slow. If he laughed with someone else, her chest would burn in a way she couldn't explain. One time he complimented a family friend's hairstyle, and she spent 2 hours plaiting hers differently, then acted like it didn't matter. But it did. Everything did. One evening, the house was full, visitors, cousins, too many shoes by the door. Music floated through the air, jollof rice perfumed every corner. She wore a yellow gown her mother picked for her. Modest, but soft around the waist. She didn't want to admit she chose it because she knew he liked yellow. He saw her. She knew because he paused mid-conversation and stared just long enough. Later, when no one was looking, he passed by and whispered, "You look like a quiet problem." She almost smiled. But instead, she said, "And you look like someone looking for trouble." He grinned. That grin she now hated for how it made her feel. The evening passed in laughter and noise, but her heart stayed in one corner, pacing. After everyone left and the house settled, she walked into the kitchen to drink water. He was already there, sitting on the stool, eating the leftover puff-puff. "You always appear where I am," she said, reaching for a glass. He shrugged. "Maybe you just keep showing up where I am." Their eyes met again, that look that felt like it knew too much. This time, she didn't look away first. And neither did he. Seconds passed. Long ones. But then, footsteps echoed from the hallway. Her mother. They both moved like nothing happened. She wiped the counter. He stood and walked away. But the moment didn't go. It stayed in the air, sat between the cups, folded itself into the shadows. Watching. She told herself it was just curiosity. That if he wasn't her stepbrother, it wouldn't even matter. That she was just bored. That maybe it would pass. But nothing was passing. It was growing. One afternoon, she went to the backyard to hang clothes. The sun was playful, and the wrapper on her waist danced with the breeze. She hummed an old tune, the kind her grandmother used to sing while pounding yam. She didn't hear him approach. "You always hum when you're alone," he said behind her. She turned. "And you always appear when no one calls you." He laughed, and it wasn't the sharp, dry kind. It was soft, like he didn't mean for it to escape. "I used to hate that sound," he said. "Now I wait for it." She held the peg in her hand too tightly. "This isn't helping," she whispered. I know. So why do you keep coming close? I don't know. They stood like that, words hanging like the clothes on the line, everything open and exposed. I didn't choose this, she said. Me neither. Their eyes locked. Again. That same pull. That same question with no good answer. She wanted to cry but didn't know why. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the weight of the wrong feeling at the wrong time, in the wrong house. He stepped back. I'm sorry, he said, finally. I'll stop. She nodded. But the ache in her chest said no. Later that evening, she sat alone in the corridor, feet stretched out, head resting on the wall. She watched the sky bleed orange and thought about home. Real home. Before all this. Her mother called from the kitchen, but she didn't move. Sometimes, when hearts shift, the body stays still, trying to catch up. Days passed, but something had changed. They didn't speak much anymore, not like before. But the silence was no longer cold. It was thick. Waiting. Every brush of shoulders felt louder than words. Every look across the room lasted longer than it should. Her mother noticed she had become quieter. Are you okay? She asked one morning. She nodded. But even she didn't believe it. That Saturday, the house was full again, this time with music and guests. A birthday party for the stepfather's cousin. Relatives gathered, kids ran about, bowls of rice danced from hand to hand. Laughter covered everything like paint. She wore a red dress her mother picked. Modest, again. But it held her shape like it had been stitched for her alone. Daimeji didn't say anything, but she caught him staring twice. And each time, he looked away too late. When the party slowed down and the plates were half empty, she stepped out to the corridor to breathe. Too many people, too much perfume, too many things she didn't want to feel. Then she heard footsteps. He was behind her. You always disappear, he said gently. She didn't turn. And you always find me. A pause. Then, because I always look. That silence again. You said you'd stop, she whispered. I tried. She turned to face him, back against the wall, heart hammering like a drum in the distance. This is wrong, she said. I know. But it doesn't feel wrong. I know that too. His voice was steady, but his hands were clenched. Like he was fighting something inside him that refused to sit still. We can't. I'm not asking us to, he cut in. I just needed to say it, before it becomes something I regret not saying. She nodded. Slowly. Carefully. Like one wrong move could shatter everything. That night, she didn't sleep much. She stared at the ceiling until morning came. Her chest full. Her thoughts louder than ever. And outside, rain tapped the window again. The next morning, her mother asked her to follow her to the market. She almost said no, but her chest needed space to breathe. The compound had become too small. The walls heard too much. As they walked through rows of tomatoes, fish, and noisy bargaining, her mother's hand rested on her shoulder. It was light, but familiar. You're changing, her mother said without looking at her. She blinked. How? You smile less. Think more. Like you're carrying something no one can see. She smiled softly. Maybe I'm just growing up. Her mother nodded. Maybe. But don't let growing up break you before your time. Back home, she avoided the living room. Avoided his footsteps. Avoided her own thoughts. But avoidance has its limit. That evening, she entered the backyard to pick her mother's wrapper off the line. Daimeji was already there, watering the plants. She paused, waiting for him to speak. He didn't. She walked past him. His back stayed turned. But as she reached for the wrapper, he said quietly, Are you afraid of me? She didn't answer immediately. I'm afraid of myself, she said. He dropped the watering can. Turned to face her. Then maybe we both need to breathe, he said. She nodded, but her hands trembled. I miss how we used to argue, she whispered. When it was silly. Safe. He smiled, just a little. We still can. And so they did. For the next few days, they returned to old patterns. Fighting over who left the fridge open. Blaming each other for misplaced TV remotes. Teasing about burnt toast. But it was different now. Everything was pretend. Behind every joke was a feeling they didn't want to name. One night, as she passed him in the hallway, he said, "If things were different." She paused. "I know." Then walked on. Because sometimes, love doesn't shout. It waits. And sometimes, it waits in vain. The house grew quiet again. Not empty, just quieter. Even her mother started noticing. "You and Meiji don't talk like before," she said one evening while folding clothes. "We're fine," she replied. But the truth sat on her chest like a stone. The pretending was too loud. The silence even louder. One night, after everyone had gone to bed, she sat in the corridor with her knees pulled up, face pressed to them. The moon was out, lazy and full. The compound slept, but her thoughts refused to. Then she heard it, those quiet footsteps she'd come to know without looking. Meiji. He sat beside her without saying a word. For a while, they just breathed the same air, not touching, not speaking. Until he said, "I'm going to boarding school." She looked at him, eyes wide. "When?" "Next week. My dad said it's time." She swallowed. "You didn't tell me." "I'm telling you now." Silence stretched again. This time, it wrapped around them tightly. "I don't know what this is," she whispered. "But I'll miss it." He nodded. "Me too." She wanted to say more, something that would hold the moment, pin it in place. But what could she say? That her heart had become a thing that answered only when he was near? Instead, she said, "Write me." He smiled. "I will." And that was it. They sat a little longer. Then stood and went inside. The day he left, she didn't cry. She watched from the upstairs window as the car pulled out of the compound. He looked back once. She waved. Just once. And even though nothing had happened, no kiss, no confession, no promise, it still felt like something had ended. Weeks passed. Letters came. Short ones. Teasing ones. Safe ones. Her mother noticed she started smiling again. And though the story didn't end in madness or fire, it lingered, quiet, tender, unfinished. Like most truths.